Moin! Welcome back. Today we have NightmareGER in his Tier 9 French battleship, the Jean Bart. He is in a division with me. I am in the Tier 9 Izumo. And we are going to try to do our best together to make the enemy's life hell. The Jean Bart is a premium battleship. It was actually the last French battleship ever built, laid down in 1940 and finished in 1955, way after the World War. And most of the time it was actually in Casablanca, so that explains why the Germans didn't get it. Jean Bart himself, as you can see on the picture here, was actually a French privateer who was born in 1650 and fought for Louis XIV as a privateer first, and later he became an admiral of the French fleet. He survived both the war between France and the Dutch provinces in 1672, as well as the 9-year war between France and pretty much the rest of the Europe. So he actually made quite a living out of there, and he survived. Nightmare was just taking a quick look over there at the Izumo. And the Izumo and the Jean Bart have some stuff in common. For example, the Izumo, they both have their guns in front. The Izumo has 9 guns, 410mm. Jean Bart has 8 guns, 380mm. But the Izumo's guns can't, well, they can't fire at the target except by giving a significant amount of broadside, because the third turret actually has pretty poor firing angles, while the Jean Bart can always fire both turrets at the same target without any problems. As you can see, we're moving up to support our Östergötland in the center. This is important, as Flamu will tell you quite often, but it's not always easy to take a position central to the map. Especially you need to make sure that you can disengage with your battleship if you get too much enemy fire coming in. But if you can move in, you can punish enemy ships moving into the cap or giving broadside to you, and you can have a very strong impact on the game. Look at the Östergötland. For a second I thought it was Flambas, but it's just a knockoff Flampas. So there's no chance of him carrying us to victory, and so we have to do this stuff ourselves. The first target was sighted, the enemy Amalfi. Nightmare takes a shot, but he misses, and the Amalfi makes use of the special smoke the Italians get to get out of there before he is getting fired at again. So now he's looking for promising targets. First, he's trying to aim at that buffalo over there, because that guy is actually giving him quite a bit of broadside. But most of the enemy ships are still moving around quite wildly, so it doesn't have a unified easy front at the moment to shoot at. So right now, most of the targets are actually either angled towards him, invisible, or just in a bad position, so he actually fires at the Scharnhorst. The Scharnhorst is actually not a good target to shoot at this range. It has a turtleback armor, and he probably won't do a lot of damage, but it's better than nothing, and he's giving full broadside, so he might chunk him still pretty hard. He pops his reload booster, and that's when he notices that the enemy Iowa is moving in broadside, and he spanks him pretty hard. Even with the small 380mm guns, the Jean Bart can do a lot of damage to broadside ships. And since he popped the reload booster, he gets to fire again right away. And again, another citadel. So that's just a brutal paddling for that Iowa. And since it's AP citadel damage, he can only heal 10% of that. While we look at the map, it turns out the enemy has completely given up on A. Only a lone Riga is trying to escape our ships at A. But you know, he's moving pretty much in a straight line, running as fast as he can from our Albemarle and support ships. So the enemy actually have given up completely on an entire flank, while they're still pretty strongly pushing at C, and they have a lot of ships in B, which are, you know, hiding behind that island. This is not a recipe for success. So the Riga comes around the corner, and Nightmare goes ahead and takes very careful aim. Riga is running as fast as he can, aims all 8 380mm guns, shuts out. The reload booster is on cooldown, unfortunately, so he will have to make do with one salvo. Follows up on the shots, see what they do. Bam! 3 citadels, and the Albemarle finishes off the Riga. So this was the first kill of our team. Quite brutal. And the enemy team now has no ships in A and very few ships that are in a position to actually crossfire the Jean Bart and the Izumo here. So he has just made our life a whole lot safer. A whole lot of enemy ships are still hiding behind the island in B. They're not able to do a lot from there, but obviously they also cannot be shot at easily. And that's when the enemy Amalfi moves into the cap. And since it's a very fast cruiser, we might actually get a shot at them. But then Nightmare spots the enemy Iowa. And that Iowa is giving him broadside again and taunts him with this broadside. Come on, Jean Bart, punish me. Do it, do it. But this time, RNGesus is not with him. The shells go wide, they splash around the ship, and he only gets one hit in there. But then the Amalfi offers himself up, also giving perfect broadside. He pops the reload booster because this is a very, very good target. But the Amalfi turns out, and only one shell connects to the ship, and the other shells fall into the water. The Amalfi inks himself again, tries to hide in its smoke, but Nightmare is able to get another shot out. But it's questionable whether that's going to hit a lot. 6 overpens. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot, and not enough at the same time. So, the enemy Z-23 is spotted. He just fired torpedoes by going out backwards behind the island. 2 of them hit the Izumo, which is me. But it doesn't do too much damage. And while we're just looking at him, the enemy Sinop finally got bored from sitting behind the island and is pushing out full broadside to 2 tier 9 battleships. So Nightmare takes the first salvo, hits him with a citadel, and I take another one in the Izumo, and we delete the Sinop out of this world. Now that's a paddling. And just as we thought, well, maybe the enemy has learned a lesson, there's the Iowa again, giving full broadside and just daring Nightmare to finish him. Nightmare fires. The Iowa also eats a couple of torps who would have finished him, but Nightmare gets another citadel and sinks the Iowa. Now it stands 10-7. We have one of the caps, but we still have the Z-23 in the B cap, and most of the enemy fleet is at C. At the same time, 3 of our ships are still firmly in A, even though there hasn't been an enemy anywhere in that area for at least 5 minutes. So Nightmare is pushing up, getting into a position where he can shoot the enemy that are in C. While I take the Izumo around, I load HE, and I try to sail away from the central island while still opening up the angle in order to take a shot at the Z-23 to finally get rid of him. And here you can see HE spam coming in from the enemy Friesland. But at this point, we are solidly in the lead, and Nightmare still has quite a lot of health to play with here, so it's not too bad. I managed to get the Izumo finally in a position far enough from the central island that I can take a shot, and with a couple of shots from the super heavy HE on the Japanese battleships, I finally sink the Z-23. Any second now. There we go. So, now there are no targets visible at the moment, but Nightmare is still getting farmed. However, the Friesland is missing a lot of the shots because Nightmare is not being spotted either. So he's moving backwards, trying to disengage, preserve some of his health, and that's when the enemy Buffalo shows up. And just like the mythical or near-mythical Buffalo of the North American plains, with giving full broadside, he's easy to hit. So he pops his reload booster and fires the first salvo, and he gets another citadel, up to 160,000 damage now, and he gets to fire again before the Buffalo can make it into the cover of the island, and he lands another citadel, which also earns him a reward right there. So Nightmare is now in a difficult position. He is still being HE farmed from these ships, and he probably should have used this opportunity right now to disengage and move over between those islands towards our California on the eastern flank, just to preserve his ship. But, you know, he's not in a bad position. The fires are, you know, annoying, but not that bad yet. And maybe he just missed the opportunity to get out of there. Also, there are some juicy ships up there, like the Fiji that has no armor. There's still a Kutuzov up there. And then he fires his guns with HE at the enemy Friesland and actually sets him on fire and does a certain damage, but he doesn't sink the Friesland. And now there's a lot of HE spam coming in, setting another fire on him, and he is very low on health. His repair is on cooldown. His damage control is on cooldown. And there are 2 more fires, probably from the Kutuzov, and they are just going to finish him right there. So at this point, it's 9-4. Most of our fleet is now moving north through the B cap towards the C cap. The game is pretty much in our hands right now. It doesn't look like we're going to lose this. Our own Buffalo is now moving up. He is, however, giving an uncomfortable amount of broadside to the enemy Frederick the Great, oder Friedrich der Große. But he is able to move up and support the Ostergotland, who is just around that corner there, trying to spot the enemy and trying to take a couple of pot shots at them. So Nightmare is looking around. He is looking over at the Frederick the Great. I mean, you know, right now we don't have camera control in replay, so we do what we can. So the Fiji actually spots the Buffalo or the Ostergotland and starts smoking up, because obviously he's very afraid. Fiji is a very squishy ship. So the Buffalo pops his radar, detects the Fiji, and starts shooting him. And this is an American radar. It lasts quite long. So I actually managed to take out another ship with the Izumo, and we just keep firing into the mix. However, the Ostergotland has overextended, and the secondaries of the Kutuzov actually managed to take him out. So in a very short order, we lost a couple of ships, but we are still so far ahead, and there is very little chance that the enemy will be able to come back, and also the Kutuzov gets down. At this time, it's mostly mopping up and finishing the enemy. Even though our Buffalo is still giving an unhealthy amount of broadside to the enemy, and he actually takes a pretty big hit from the Frederick the Great. We didn't see the shells incoming, and that allows the enemy Buffalo to finish him off with a couple of hits. So my brother switches from the pretty doomed Buffalo over to my ship in the Izumo and follows me. I still have pretty much half my health. So there is no real chance that any of these ships can sink me. I take a shot at the enemy Frederick the Great. There's no chance of citadels, but at this range and with these guns, you can still do a really good amount of damage to these ships. So now it's just the question, will the time run out or can we sink him? My brother jumps over to the California, which is the flagship of the Weight Watchers of America. It's especially chunky, very heavy, and very, very slow. Also, from what I hear, the guns are not very accurate and they reload very, very slowly. But at this range and with the Frederick the Great in this low health, it's no problem for our chunky boy here to finally take out the Kurfürst. There we go, and finish the game. So the game ends. We take home the victory. Nightmare did 182,000 damage with 11 citadels in the mix. And sometimes you just need to be thankful for your enemy's mistakes when they present all this broadside to you. That's it for now. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.